Keenan Allen has been traded to Chicago. It seems like the Bears are loading up for potential number one pick, Caleb Williams. But who in the world is Justin Herbert going to be throwing passes to this season? We hit on all of that, plus more NFL news on today's episode of Locked On Fantasy Football.
You are Locked On Fantasy, your daily NFL fantasy podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thanks for making Locked On Fantasy Football your first listen every day. We are part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm one of your co-hosts, Michelle Magdziuk, when I'm not doing this. I'm a researcher and fantasy analyst over at NFL.com.
All right, I'm your other co-host, Vinnie Iyer, and I'm an NFL fantasy betting, draft, now free agency writer at sportingnews.com. I have my grades out for all 32 teams, how they did, including the latest here. We know Keenan Allen from the Chargers to the Bears in a trade, and Marquise Hollywood Brown lives up to my prediction and goes to the Chiefs. So excited to talk about that as well on today's show.
Oh, yeah, we have so much to get to. But first, today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers get $200 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $200 if your bet wins. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. So all of a sudden, the NFL likes to announce news at like midnight, right? It's always when we go to bed. Apparently, these trades go down. So we get another trade with a wide receiver moving teams. And this time it's Keenan Allen. Huge trade to the Bears. So it seems like the Bears are really loading up here, probably for Caleb Williams that we expect them to take at the number one pick. This offense is going to look so different, Vinny. Like let's just act like Caleb Williams is going to be there. And then it's DeAndre Swift, DJ Moore, Keenan Allen, Kmet, Gerald Everett. They are loading up. They got a new offensive coordinator with Shane Waldron. This offense might look completely different than what we're used to with the Bears.
Yeah, I think you may go away from the running quarterback. I know Caleb Williams is a pretty good athlete here, but now you start looking at the weapons. They're much like they had in Seattle. Keep in mind, Seattle like to use multiple tight ends as well. And now you've seen that, right? All the tight ends are leaving Seattle when Waldron was gone. So now the Bears have added a second athletic guy in Gerald Everett. There's a connection between him and Waldron from the Rams and that style of offense. So that's another athletic target there with Kmet that we cannot forget. It was a little bit surprising that they signed him, but this is the direction they're going in. They're trying to have versatile alignments here, much like the Chargers did, like we saw with the two tight ends that they would have. Everett will probably be involved like that in Seattle, the way that they ran it there. So I really like this as an offense as a whole. That said, I don't love Keenan Allen. I'm not going to invest a lot in Keenan Allen. Again, we're fortunate that he still has something left, but does he really? I mean, he's breaking down, and I think everyone looked at this, the Chargers only got a fourth-round pick for Keenan Allen. I think they were prepared to cut him. So they're like, okay, we'll take anything we can get for him. He's breaking down. Like, if the Chargers really needed him, especially after cutting Mike Williams, wouldn't they have kept him? And I think the Chargers are going a different direction. We'll get into that in a moment. But, yeah, Caleb Williams has a nice array of weapons. We have DJ Moore, who's still going to be the clear number one here, no matter what Allen is able to do and stay on the field for. So I don't know how much you're going to get from Allen. Again, he hasn't been able to stay healthy. He's getting older every year, and he's still kind of putting himself together with duct tape to keep producing the NFL. Like, he could be a future Hall of Famer with his production, but I don't know if the Bears are going to get that type of player, right? So I think it's a downgrade because Keenan Allen was so productive with either quarterback when we go back to Phillip Rivers and Justin Herbert in Los Angeles. Now he's a rookie, and rookies might latch on to one guy, and that could be more than we know. And then we have the tight ends as well that can diversify the targets, especially when Keenan Allen is working the slot. So I don't love it for Keenan Allen individually, but I love it for Caleb Williams' potential sleeper value, especially if he adds a little running to passing to these weapons.
Yeah, that's the thing. Like, I think this is a nice ad for the Bears, and especially, like, I love that they're building around Caleb Williams. Give him these veterans that he can lean on. That's going to be so nice for him to come into the NFL. Takes the pressure off of him a lot. But I will say, like, in terms of these receivers, I think it knocks them all down in fantasy. So DJ Moore finally got, he got a lot of the targets last year, pretty much the only wide receiver in town with Chicago. So he led the team with 136 targets, but he played every game. So DJ Moore averaged 8 targets per game, and we were excited about that. Keenan Allen averaged 8 receptions per game with the Chargers, over nearly 12 targets per game. So you're saying he has to split those with DJ Moore, and it already was a much lower threshold with the Bears than it is with the Chargers. Now, again, it should be more pass heavy than it was last year with Fields and a mobile quarterback, but still, that's going to split up the target. So I don't love that for Moore or for Keenan Allen. And then also Cole Kmet ended up being a pretty solid tight end last year, and especially towards the end of the year, because he was needed. There was nobody else there. Darnell Mooney was dealing with injuries and on and off the field and was just inconsistent. So it was DJ Moore and Cole Kmet. Now it's not going to happen that way. He has to split with Allen and with Moore. And now also Everett is going to steal some as well. So I think that knocks them all down. But at the same time, Caleb Williams now has this whole slew of really great playmakers, even at running back now with DeAndre Swift that he can pass to. So my question for you, Vinny, how high can Caleb Williams land next year in fantasy? Does he have the capability to be a top 5 fantasy quarterback in year 1?
Well, we look at the other situations. We talked a lot about the Patriots, and if they end up with Drake May or Jane Daniels, their situation is not nearly as good as this to create a rookie quarterback to have success. The Commanders, a little bit better, right? Because they added Zach Ertz and Austin Eckler, 2 pass catchers there, along with Terry McLaurin and Jahan Dotson, although they did lose Curtis Samuel, I think is a key target. But when you look at the Bears, overall, they have the best weapons for a rookie quarterback. You get down deeper, it gets pretty ugly, right? Broncos, Raiders. I think the next team you would have to look at actually is the Vikings. If they get a quarterback that's a rookie, they have a lot of weapons. So, yeah, you have to point, where's this rookie going to throw to? And keep in mind what happened with C.J. Stroud. I mean, you saw the things develop there. Nico Collins is ready for a breakout. You had Tank Dell. You added Dalton Schultz. Noah Brown was very effective when needed for this team. So it's a very similar situation developing there with the Bears that are creating an environment for the rookie quarterback to succeed. Now it just comes down to how quickly does Williams catch on to Waldron's offense. But if he can go in there, and we talked about all his weapons, but again, he's an athlete. He's not going to be like Justin Fields and rush for 1,000 yards, but he can add 300, 400 yards that way, right? And add to his numbers. So if he's the man and he's starting right away and he's not worrying about anyone, and really, why would he? There's nobody there right now that is going to take away his role here. There's no bridge quarterback. I don't think they're going to keep Fields no matter what here. So that's the next order of business for Chicago, moving Fields so Caleb Williams can just have this job going forward.
Yeah, my biggest concern here with these wide receivers it's great for Caleb Williams' development, but at the same time, neither of these 2 wide receivers are known to catch many touchdowns, right? Like Moore finally had a decent season of touchdowns with 8 last year, by far his career high. And then Keenan Allen has never had more than 8 in a season in his entire career. 6, 4, 7 over the last 3 seasons. So where are the touchdowns coming from? Maybe Cole Kmet, Gerald Everett hasn't been a good touchdown scorer either. So that's my big worry. But let's move over to the Chargers here very quickly, because in our last segment, we're going to give our biggest winners and losers of the offseason so far. Spoiler alert, I'm going to be talking about Justin Herbert as a loser, because no Keenan Allen, no Mike Williams. Do they re-sign Mike Williams? There was reports that maybe they can bring him back for cheaper. And now I think they have to, right? Because unless they have full trust in Quentin Johnston, who was so bad as a rookie last year, what are they going to do? I know they have the number 5 overall pick. That's got to be a wide receiver. Malik Neighbors or Romeo Odunze, great addition, but they have nobody else, because they also got rid of Austin Eckler and Gerald Everett. Like, they are depleted on offense.
Yeah, keep in mind, this offense has been flipped upside down. It is now a run-heavy offense with Greg Roman. It will be.
With Gus Edwards. Like, run-heavy offense, and they have only Gus Edwards at running back.
Yeah, so I think what you'll see is they'll draft a running back. We'll see if they want to go for those wide receivers, or do they go the Brock Bowers direction, right? After letting Gerald Everett go as that type of offense they're building to try to recreate the Ravens with a Mark Andrews being the go-to guy for your quarterback. All of a sudden, Justin Herbert, we don't see him taking off in the zone read the way that Lamar Jackson did with Greg Roman. I think his athleticism will come into play, but yeah, you can't say this is a good offseason so far for Justin Herbert. I mean, the philosophy itself, going from Moore to Roman, that was one big thing, right? Offensive line still needs some work here beyond Rashawn Slater and Zion Johnson. They need to try to get better up front as well. So all these questions are sitting there here for Justin Herbert as they transition to an offense that's not friendly for the downfield passing game. I think what they're looking for, Michelle, as we talked about this, an efficient Justin Herbert, but that doesn't mean a proficient, prolific Justin Herbert, right? Playing off the running game, having the defense intact, winning games. So they're going to be more concerned about winning games than him putting up numbers, and that's not good for fantasy.
And I don't think getting rid of all of his weapons is good for winning either, but we'll get more into that in our third segment. Next segment, we're going to get into more news because we got big news that Hollywood Brown signs with the Chiefs. That's what Vinny's been waiting for. So we're going to talk about his fantasy value. And one thing I'm concerned about is he going to go way too high in drafts now? But we'll hop all into that in our next segment. Did you know that even if you have a 401k for retirement, you can still have an IRA? Robinhood has the only IRA that gives you a 3% boost on every dollar you contribute when you subscribe to Robinhood Gold. But get this, now through April 30th, Robinhood is even boosting every single dollar you transfer in from other retirement accounts with a 3% match. That's right, no cap on the 3% match. Robinhood Gold gets you the most for your retirement thanks to their IRA with a 3% match. This offer is good through April 30th. Get started at robinhood.com/boost. Subscription fees apply. And now for some legal info. Claim is Q1 2024 validated by Radius Global Market Research. Investing involves risk, including loss. Limitations apply to IRAs and 401ks. 3% match requires Robinhood Gold for 1 year from the date of the first 3% match. Must keep Robinhood IRA for 5 years. The 3% matching on transfers is subject to specific terms and conditions. Robinhood IRA available to U.S. customers in good standing. Robinhood Financial LLC member SIPC is a registered broker dealer. I texted you right away, Vinny. I was so excited for you. Hollywood Brown goes to the Chiefs. Best landing spot for him, right? And I know you're not really high on Hollywood Brown or Marquise Brown as like a talent wide receiver, but his skill set matches what the Chiefs have been looking for: the speed, the ability to, get stuff done after the catch. So really nice fit here for the Chiefs with Patrick Mahomes. But how high can he really land in fantasy next year? Are we talking top 24 wide receiver, top 20, top 15? Because in 2021, he finished with a career high wide receiver 22. He had 146 targets that year with the Ravens. That was pretty much his only good fantasy year.
Yeah, I think what you're looking at here is the roles don't change for the other guys. Travis Kelce, Rashee Rice are still where this offense goes through, a lot in the middle of the field at tight end and the big slot. And this is where we've had the most production in fantasy. Before Rice, Juju Smith-Schuster was able to extract a pretty good wide receiver 3 fantasy season because he was with Patrick Mahomes. So look, you're going to bump up Rice because now it's someone who can attract attention on the outside. It's not now Marquez Valdes-Scantling occasionally making big plays. He was cut. It's not Justin Watson occasionally tracking down a deep ball, right? This is Marquise Hollywood Brown. This guy has a lot of speed, and this is a perfect role for him. He's not the number 1 by far. He's really the number 3 option when you think about it with Kelce and Rice here. So he's going to get a lot of favorable coverage downfield. There's no ball that Patrick Mahomes throws downfield that Marquise Brown cannot track downfield. He's not Tyreek Hill fast. No one is, but Marquise Brown is a speedster. And this is why they wanted him. And clearly this is why I thought it was a good fit, because I anticipated them moving on from MVS. That's what Marquise Brown is best at. He should be a dedicated deep threat. If you force him into being like a number 1 receiver and being technical in the middle of the field and doing all that, he's going to let you down. But if all you're asking for him is to run real fast, get vertical, and catch balls from an elite quarterback, yeah, he's going to have some success. So it might come down to his touchdowns. That's going to be a little the volatility here, right? Getting touchdowns off big plays is hard for any type of receiver like this. But we know he's a big upgrade from MVS. We know he's playing with the best quarterback on the planet. we know this passing game is going to be exciting. And keep in mind, they went away from all their pass catching running backs too a little bit. So I think there's going to open up more targets for the receivers. And really, they have nobody else, right? Expect them, Sky Moore, Kadarius Toney, all these guys are gone. So it's a nice 3-receiver kind of tight-knit group here that Patrick Mahomes is going to throw to. So I love it for Mahomes. And look, Marquise Brown, he's probably wide receiver 3. That's all I can do, right? Because Rashee Rice is probably a good wide receiver 2 at this point. So that's what you have to look at it. Don't get too excited, but I love this actually for his value, but Mahomes even better than that.
I still think they might go wide receiver, though, at the end
Yeah,
of
they
that
still
first
could.
round,
Yeah.
which would add more competition. I do think at this point, Marquise Brown landing in this spot, now his cost in the draft is just going to be too high for me. It's not going to be like, it's not going to be a 5th or 6th rounder, but it's still, people are going to get excited.
Be
7th,
careful,
8th
yeah.
rounder. If he was going in the double-digit rounds, would love that flyer sleeper play, but he's not going to be a sleeper because he's with Patrick Mahomes. So, and I just don't think it's going to end up being all that amazing. Hopefully, though, this means maybe Patrick Mahomes will throw more with more
Yeah.
weapons that
Yeah.
he can trust, which would be really nice to see. And then we also got Curtis Samuel signing with the Bills. It's kind of a confusing fit for me. I thought Curtis
Yeah.
Samuel could be a really nice addition for a lot of teams, but like the Bills already had Khalil Shakir. I felt like they didn't really
Yeah, he's
need
kind of a
Curtis
slot
Samuel.
receiver, small guy, yeah.
Yeah.
So it was kind of weird.
It
So
didn't really make sense to me there. The Bills, I think, definitely still need to add a wide receiver early in the draft. If not the first round, then the second round. Like they were talking up that they need help for Stephon Diggs, and I don't think Curtis Samuel is the signing for that.
yeah, they seem to like these guys like Isaiah McKenzie, right? These like hybrid short area guys. They didn't have McKenzie. They like these Cole Beasley types, but I thought Khalil Shakir was coming on. This actually could be really good news for Shakir. I don't know if they see him consistently being an outside threat and being able to handle that number 2 role. We'll have to see what they do in the draft to kind of give us that answer, right? And then you'd say Samuel's in slot, then okay, you might be a little bit more interested in Shakir. But keep in mind they also have Dalton Kincaid, and they brought back Dawson Knox. So Dalton Kincaid is essentially a hybrid wide receiver out there. So they don't have to force themselves into wide receiver. Maybe they were trying to do that because they also need. Look, they lost a lot of pieces defensively. They were able to keep Von Miller with the restructure, but they had to say goodbye to their safeties. Their secondary got a bit gutted. They lost Tyrell Dodson at linebacker. So I think they're just keeping this as a potential. Okay, there's a lot of wide receiver depth in this class. We don't necessarily have to force ourselves to go in the first round because, again, we got to replenish a lot. We paid Josh Allen a ton. Stephon Diggs is still making money here. So this is all I think they could do, right? I mean, it's strange that Gabe Davis got a lot more than Curtis Samuel. I didn't think there was too much separating these two guys at this stage in different type roles, but yeah, I just want to see what his role is going to be. I have no interest in Samuel individually for fantasy, even though he was somewhat productive with the Commanders. And now I think Josh Allen, this helps him a little bit, obviously, having an extra weapon, but I still think it's a wait and see approach to see what else they do at wide receiver.
Yeah, if anything, this might hurt James Cook a little bit with the receptions because Curtis
Yeah,
Samuel is such that low average up the
good point.
target type of guy. And then something that hurt another player. Oh my goodness, we've been so excited about Josh Jacobs going to the Packers. It's been such a roller coaster with this, right? First, Josh Jacobs signs with the Packers. You're like, oh no, it's going to be a split backfield between Aaron Jones and Josh Jacobs. Then they cut Aaron Jones, and you're like, oh my gosh, Josh Jacobs has it all to himself. And then they re-sign AJ Dillon. Now, it's still better than having Aaron Jones there. And AJ Dillon is not a good running back. But at the same time, AJ Dillon led this backfield with 178 carries last year. I think they're still going to make him involved, which is just the annoying part. It's not going to be Josh Jacobs, who's just one of those few guys that we could depend on to get all the volume now in a backfield. I think he's going to be splitting it more than we would like. So this signing annoyed me.
Yeah, I think AJ Dillon, what happened here is he explored his options. They weren't very good. And he realized, okay, I'll just take
Nobody
this.
wanted him.
No, nobody wanted him. He's a limited back. I don't think it's necessarily bad for Jacobs. They didn't really have a good backup situation here, let's be honest. I mean, once Aaron Jones went down, they're moving like Patrick Taylor and some of these guys that were not good, right? So I think they wanted to have some value. And I think it's always good to have a backup. And I think You want that guy that's going to get just enough touches to keep our guy fresh. And that's what I think will get AJ Dillon. They didn't pay a ton for him at all. It was really
No.
bargain basement to bring him back. So that says, I mean, one thing I'll say, like when you're reporting, you follow the money. And when you were looking at free agency, you follow the money as well. I mean, they paid Jacobs to touch the ball a lot. And I think that's what will happen.
But they were paying
Dillon,
Aaron Jones a lot, and for whatever
yeah.
reason, for the majority of the season, they were like, "No, we need Dillon to come in here a
Well,
lot."
Jones was hurt for a good stretch too, and he
Even when he
wasn't fully up.
wasn't, though,
Yeah,
it was
I think
annoying.
when you pay Jacobs is more in his prime though. When you look at it, he's only 25, 26, so he's a guy that he still has plenty of mileage left, and I think that's exactly what his contract reflects. Right, it extends right before his 30th birthday, right there with 4 years, 48 million. So when you extend, it's not just the year that it's on there, but the 12 million per season. I think that says he's going to get touches, but it's good. He has to have, all these guys have to have a backup. And what I like about the situation, you draft Jacobs, you stash Dillon, clear handcuff situation. Sometimes we don't get it so clear in a lot of these places, but yeah, I wouldn't be too worried about it, because he's not going to be a factor in the passing game the way that Jacobs is. And we know you can make up a lot of fantasy points being involved as a check down receiver, and that's what you'll see with him and Jordan Love.
Yeah. I'm not gonna move on down Jacobs too much because of the
Yeah,
signing, but it
yeah.
does disappoint me a little bit. Like, I was probably gonna be a little too high on Josh Jacobs if Dillon didn't sign. Now I'll be a little bit more cautious, and maybe it'll be better for me in the long haul anyways.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't say Josh Jacobs is a loser at all. He's going to
No.
win a lot in this situation. But we
Yeah.
will talk about guys that are not free agents based on what happened in free agency. Did they win or lose? Who won or lost the most? We'll get into that in our final segment. Our answers might surprise you. They might be right with what you're thinking. All right, I'm excited. It's almost NCAA tournament time. I love looking at the brackets here, and it's great. Now I'm in North Carolina, so I can get in on the action on FanDuel. Say goodbye to busted brackets because FanDuel lets you bet on every game of the NCAA tourney. That's right. You can bet on every game. Time to go dancing on America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers get $200. That's right. They've upped their offer in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. That's $200 to use on point spreads, money lines. You can even pick who's going to win it all, cut down the nets there in Phoenix. Just visit fanduel.com/lockedon and bet on college hoops until they cut down the nets. Now, if you're looking for action before it all starts there early next week, well, I've got a good one, NBA. It's a good matchup tonight. Two really exciting players that stuff the stat sheet here. You have Nikola Jokic and Victor Wembanyama. What a game setting up between the Nuggets and Spurs. Some stats galore here. They have a nice little parlay that you can look at there. So you can look at Nikola Jokic getting 10 plus assists, 25 plus points. And then on the other side of things, you can get that with 20 plus points and 2 made threes from Wemby. So not bad at all. That's a good parlay, and it really pays out more than plus 500 there on your return. So check it out there at FanDuel. Get in on the action with the NBA and get ready for the March Madness on FanDuel. All right, Michelle, this is a fun segment that we'll have here to close the show and the week of shows. It's been busy. We're dizzy here with our work on the show, our work with NFL.com and sportingnews.com. It's been a lot. So after all this, Michelle, we have declared the first week of free agency, winner and loser of the guys that didn't change teams that stayed there. So let's reveal your loser first because you already mentioned him on the show.
Yeah, so I just wanted to dig more into Justin Herbert. He's my biggest loser of free agency, and just of this offseason, right? It started with them bringing in Jim Harbaugh, and I was fine with that signing. I really did like that signing, but then they added Greg Roman as offensive coordinator. So now it really looks like they're going to focus on trying to be a good defense, heavy run game. But then they lost Keenan Allen, Mike Williams, Austin Eckler, and Gerald Everett this offseason. That is 716 of Herbert's 1,300 targets over the last 2 seasons. That's over 55% of his targets just gone. And he's left with Joshua Palmer and Quentin Johnston. Now, I know Quentin Johnston was their first round pick last year, but it looks so bad. He had the opportunity last year. It's not like he didn't produce because he didn't have opportunity. He had it with Mike Williams injured, and he just was so bad. Maybe he takes a big leap next year, but that's very rare. And then they replaced Austin Eckler with Gus Edwards. Like, come on. And then they replaced Gerald Everett with Hayden Hurst and Will Disley. Now, maybe that's a wash. I'm not saying like Gerald Everett's amazing, but it's definitely not an upgrade. It's at best a wash. And then the Eckler to Gus Edwards is just insane. Now, obviously, they're going to use their number 5 overall pick on a wide receiver. Gosh, I hope so, right? For Justin Herbert's sake. And that's great. Doomsayer neighbors will be great with Herbert, but they have nothing else. So if they're going to focus on the run game, I don't think it's going to be pretty with moving the ball with Gus Edwards or even whatever rookie they end up taking. The run blocking was the absolute worst, according to PFF last year. They were the worst run blocking team in the NFL, middle of the pack in pass blocking, and they have not done anything to add to the offensive line yet. So they either have to use a number 5 pick on fixing the offensive line or getting a wide receiver. They really need both. It's going to be really hard for them to fix up this offense. He has no weapons around him. I don't like the offense coordinator with his situation. I hate this for Justin Herbert this offseason.
Yeah, and you can see where the Chargers' priorities lied, right? We thought about, okay, what are they going to do with Khalil Mack? What are they going to do with Joey Bosa? What did they do with both those guys? They restructured their contracts and kept those 2 defensive pieces. The wide receivers, they didn't really try. I mean, Keenan Allen didn't want to restructure. He was gone. I mean, they didn't really waste time on that and found a trade partner. So this is the philosophy, running game, defense. I think that's not going to be it. I mean, they're also not fools. Like Justin Herbert is a special talent. Again, I don't know if they're going to run him a little bit more, but that's been the history of Greg Roman. Even go back to some degree with Tyrod Taylor, right? That was his best value ever when he was a starting quarterback, was when he was running and putting up some numbers. And we go back to Colin Kaepernick, we go to Lamar Jackson. So how are they going to make this work? I'm intrigued to see it, but I'm not all that interested to see it in terms of investing too high on Justin Herbert. Now, I'm going to go with a different loser quarterback. And last year, he was playing our game and was trying to say, where am I going to be? Am I leaving? Who am I going to land with? All that stuff, picking his team, putting us through all this drama. Now, the biggest thing you've heard from him is the potential vice president run, Aaron Rodgers. The GM of the Jets, no, he's not really. It's still Joe Douglas, but he has been very quiet, Aaron Rodgers. There's not much going on at all. Remember when they were banging the table, Sauce Gardner for Calvin Ridley? What happened there? They didn't look for anybody. They haven't really looked at much help here on this team at all. On the other side, I mean, Robert Sala's been busy trying to add like former 49ers here to his mix. I mean, he added Javon Kinlaw, he added Isaiah Oliver. We'll see what they can do for the Jets, but this has not been a great offseason overall for the Jets. I mean, last year they had so much buzz that it came crashing down. The biggest thing that you had happen for the Jets this offseason, Tyrod Taylor is now your backup instead of Zach Wilson. So they said, okay, great. We don't want to get in the mess we had last year, but what does this do for actual Aaron Rodgers and his value? Where are the receivers? Where are even the attempts at signing one? You think they would at least go after Marquez Valdez-Scantling for Rodgers. That still has not happened. So I don't know what's going to happen. Offensive line is still a concern here. Laken Tomlinson is not going to be back. They haven't re-signed Mekhi Becton. There's a lot of concerns up front. They got rid of CJ Uzomah at tight end. They got to figure out how to get that settled with Tyler Conklin. So it has been pretty ugly. It is still stuck on Garrett Wilson and Breece Hall. So I can't really get beyond that here and back Aaron Rodgers. I'm not excited. I'm not going to touch Aaron Rodgers this year. Justin Herbert and Aaron Rodgers, I think they're losers to the point of we're not going to draft them as much as possible this year in fantasy.
Yeah, a lot's going to depend on the draft for the Jets. If they really focus on this offense, and they already have a good defense, right? So if they take either Brock Bowers or a wide receiver in the first round, or start to load up there on offense, I might start to get back into it. But it can't be just Garrett Wilson and Breece Hall, that's for sure. So getting a little bit worried. My biggest winner is a guy I was super worried about heading into the offseason. It was Rashad White, the running back for the Buccaneers. I was saying he was highly inefficient last year. The Buccaneers had the worst run game in the NFL. They're surely going to try to fix this run game and bring in a different running back to at least compete with White or steal some, split the backfield. Well, all the running backs have pretty much dried up in free agency. We're talking like Zeke Elliott, J.K. Dobbins. Those are the best guys left. Now, if Dobbins comes, maybe I am still a little bit worried. I know he's coming off the Achilles, but he's still a better talent than Rashad White prior to the injuries. I don't know if he would be afterwards. Possibly they go running back early, but really not supposed to be a running back that goes in the top 2 rounds of this draft. So maybe they're the first team that takes a running back late in the second round. Who knows? But even if they take a running back at that point, I still think Rashad White, as a veteran with the same head coach, I knew it's a new OC, but same head coach, like he's still going to get the workload, at least to start the year. He's still going to have that opportunity to prove his worth. And they haven't added any pass catchers either. So the target should still be there. I think White gets a lot of volume again. I don't think that's smart for the team, but it's looking that way, at least at this moment.
Yeah, despite losing Dave Canales to be the head coach of the Panthers and bringing Liam Cohen, I don't think their philosophy is going to change all that much. Why would it? They were pretty successful last year. A lot of things are pretty intact here with their offense. Mike Evans getting the big deal return. Baker Mayfield is here. So I don't think they want to mess with too much here. They did bring back Chase Edmonds, so maybe that's it, right? They have Chase Edmonds to complement Rashad White and then maybe take a flyer on a power back at some point, right? So that's the thing. I think they're in good shape here to not land someone that's going to compete with the receiving aspect. And we know that was a big part of Rashad White's value. Now, they could bring in someone to power back. Elliott might get a chance here late or something. But it's looking good. I mean, they're just not really all that interested. They got Edmonds, and I think they're okay. I mean, because they also are a pass first team, so they don't need to necessarily force it with the running back here. And they were happy with what Rashad White did, even though it was inefficient. He was the compliment they were looking for and came through. So I do like your choice here. I think Zamir White might be a close second because they didn't really do anything to replace Josh Jacobs in the backfield. But my guy is actually one of your guys. It's George Pickens. This has worked out nicely for George Pickens. We talked all about Kenny Pickett to Pickens last year. That fizzled, right? And we saw it a lot in the preseason. It did not materialize in the regular season. Now, I think they moved Deontay Johnson partly because they wanted to unleash Pickens as a number one, right? He should be a number one. He's big. He's fast. He's strong. He can stretch a field. He has that alpha diva mentality that you want for a number one receiver. Get him the ball, right? You get Russell Wilson in there. Who can get him the ball better than Russell Wilson? He's a great deep ball thrower. Pickens is a great deep ball route runner. And now Deontay Johnson's gone. Those targets are vacated. They haven't done anything here. They probably had some receiving help in the draft, but he's going to be Drake London, but several notches higher because of the way that is with Wilson stretching the field. And I think it's great here for him. I mean, it doesn't get any better than this, that you have an all-time deep ball thrower. That's what Russell Wilson is. You know what he's done with DK Metcalf when they've had some big seasons together in Seattle. So you got to be really excited about George Pickens. I think this guy has just got oozing raw talent. He kind of really surprised. If you look at his numbers last year, they kind of ascended, even with that quarterback mess he had with Kenny Pickett and Mason Rudolph. We saw Rudolph actually unlock him a little bit. So I'm really excited for your guy, George Pickens. I think he should get some hype, and I'll be going there. And if you say Marquise Brown or George Pickens, I'm going to be way into Pickens this year over Marquise Brown.
Oh, by a gazillion. They won't even be in the same range. No, I'm really excited for Pickens because if it was Kenny Pickett, I wouldn't be. But with the upgrade to Russell Wilson and how good their skill sets mesh together, I really like that. And then once you kick out Deontay Johnson, that's 150 targets right there. Like that is massive. No matter if they add Tyler Boyd or add a wide receiver in the second round, it's not going to matter. So yeah, George Pickens is a huge winner this offseason. As soon as I saw you put his name in there, I was like, oh, I should have picked him. I was upset because I got the first pick. I don't know why.
Well, you let me talk about him, so now
you
can be excited that I talked about a Steeler. So
exactly.
that also comes into play.
Well, that's it for today's show and the shows this week. Thank you to all for making Locked On Fantasy Football your first listen every day. Every dayers, Vinnie and I will be back on Monday. Maybe there'll be more crazy news. Probably. This has been a wild offseason. Have a great weekend, everybody. Bye, y'all.